Welcome to The Teacher's Story. I'm Jackie Scully. This is a podcast to elevate teacher voice. In this program, you will hear teachers sharing their journey into this profession and their ideas for education. I'm kicking it off Teacher Appreciation Week, which starts May 2nd. This is about honest, vulnerable, inspiring storytelling. It's a time and a space for teachers to share their ideas for the future of education. Teachers are beautiful beings who give their heart and soul to their community. They're innovators, they're inspirational, not only to children, but to the people around them. And they deserve to share their voice. So welcome to The Teacher's Story. Enjoy. Hi, welcome to The Teacher's Story. Today we have Calvin Lawrence with us, and I am so excited. Calvin is a motivational speaker, but he is just a mentor and a motivator in general. He has connected with me through LinkedIn before we even met on Zoom and had a conversation. He was already reaching out and just motivating me on a daily basis. And I just feel like this is a great person to have by your side. So I'm so excited to have him here. Calvin is not only a motivational speaker, but he is a founder and consultant of Calvinlawrencespeaks LLC. He was a principal and school director and professor and director, so lots of experience in the educational world. He has his doctorate in education, so I know we're going to learn a lot from Calvin today. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Jackie. I appreciate you inviting me. I'm very honored because I know you don't just pick anybody right off the street. So I feel like I maybe arrived now that I'm on the Jackie Scully show.
Thank you so much. What was there a moment or something that was a life experience that made you think about, I think I want to do something in education?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know that there was one moment, but I know that there were lots of people. And you mentioned mentors and mentoring, and I try to do my best because I had such great mentors when I came up. I mean, maybe going way back, if I go way back, I go all the way back to fourth grade, but I can't go that far back because I know I wasn't sure about doing this thing or doing anything in education back then. Just the light bulb did come on about fourth grade because I had an outstanding teacher, one who I thought was the best teacher I've ever had, college or whatever. And so, but it was later in life, I guess, maybe around high school and even through college, the first time that I felt like this is maybe where I need to be. Now, I've had some time since that time that make me think, oh, what have I got myself into, right? But back then, it was like I had some outstanding people who shared so much of themselves, their time, their resources, their knowledge, and they wanted to make me better and inspired me. And I feel like that's maybe when I just decided, hey, this is what I need to do.
That's awesome. And I always think it goes back to an elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
Whenever I've had these conversations, and I give it up to the elementary school teachers.
Yes.
That is a
Yes.
hard job.
Yes. It's a hard job.
I originally was going to be an elementary school teacher. That was my first track. And I'm like, nope. I took a few classes. I'm like, wait, say what? You mean I have to be an expert in all these core subjects, K through fifth grade?
Yeah.
No, there's no way. I was like, I don't give me a math class.
Right. And it's even tougher now.
Yeah.
You have gone through the period when we've done standardized testing and all that. But back when I started and when I first started, and maybe back even before when I was a student, teachers had this free reign to teach how they needed to teach. And they still had to be experts at all these fields, but they didn't have the pressure of the test and the pressure of the state and the pressure of all this other stuff. And so they really could teach. And I think maybe that was why, part of the reason why Dora Harris, my fourth grade teacher, because I remember my worst teacher, I remember my best teacher. She was the best. And I won't call the other lady out on the carpet, but she taught so well and did so many things and went beyond whatever they constricted during that time period. I know she went above and beyond the call of duty. And later she became a principal because I remember hearing about her. And then she said something to my mom later about me. that, oh yeah, I knew he was going to be okay.
Yeah.
But she was the one who inspired me. And you were right. Elementary is
Yeah.
tough. I know middle school's tough because I did all three levels, but when you do everything for everything, and then you gotta do the other little things too that elementary kids need, yeah, it's tough.
Yes. Because it's also just like how to be a person, right? Like
Yes,
just
yeah,
life skills.
yeah, right.
And whenever I've been asked that question too, I always go back to my sixth grade teacher because at the time, sixth grade was still part of elementary school.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, this is back in the day when they had junior high. Now when I say junior high, no one knows what I'm talking about. And I tell them like I went to junior high 7, 8, 9. So I didn't start high school till 10th grade. They're like,
Oh,
what?
huh. Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
I'm like a
Yeah.
dinosaur, right?
No, not you,
But
not you.
my sixth grade teacher was my language arts teacher. And he also was like the head of all the musicals in the high school. So he was very theatric and like
Mm-hmm.
always put on these like big lessons. And our projects were always like do a role play and act out something. It was very interactive. And he was just like so happy. Like he
Right,
just
right,
exuded joy.
right.
And his name was Mr. Ed Edwards. That was his full name, Edwards. And
Wow.
he just, and he brought something in you. He brought it out of
Mm-hmm.
you. Like I was super shy. And
Mm-hmm.
we had to do these presentations like in sixth grade where you're like, I got to talk for 10 minutes in front of the class. What are you talking about? And
No.
you did it. And you also
Yeah.
did it because I'm like, I want to impress him. Like it
Yes.
was like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't really care
There you
about
go.
the other students in the
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to impress him.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the presentations is so like, how did I pick this? I picked Leonardo da Vinci. So I had to dress up like Leonardo da Vinci. And my
Wow.
dad helped me like make a Mona Lisa and like write backwards in my journal. And he like loved it. Like the teacher was like, this is so cool. It's so different. Like I would never expect you to pick Leonardo da Vinci as a sixth grader. And I go back to it's like it's a
Yeah.
flashbulb memory. I can go back and I'm like, I'm in his
Yeah.
classroom.
You
How
can go
crazy
back.
is
You can go
that?
back. You can go back. It's funny. I'll give you a quick story. Quick for me. Fourth grade. So you said something. You said you did it. It wasn't because of those kids around you. It didn't make any difference. It was because of that guy.
Yeah.
And so we had a spelling bee for the whole school. Well, I don't know that I was that great of a speller per se, but I was going to win that spelling bee for that teacher. And I
Mm.
did. And it's like, that was like, it was one of those breakthrough moments too, because I didn't make a difference with any of my buddies. And I had buddies in the class, but I didn't care a hoot about them. It was like, for Dora Harris, her name's going to be beside mine because that was how that thing was going to be. And I'm going to win it. And I did. I won the spelling bee.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what, people when they go into education, they have this goal of like, I want to inspire young people. I want to show them their spark. Like I want
Right.
them to feel like they could be anything.
Right.
That's a really
Right.
joyful type
Right.
of career to be in. And like, that's why I went
Right.
into it as well. And so what were some of your any stories or lessons that you not like lessons like that you taught, but just like lessons from teaching or anything from your early experiences?
Well, I guess like from early experiences, the best people were the ones that were the best relators. So it's kind of like what you're saying about your favorite guy. They were just really good at relationship stuff. I just did a thing recently for a lady, and I had to write a whole paper, and I didn't realize. It's funny how you said you go back in these stories, you're like you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and I had to search my memory banks, and I got to start writing some stuff down because my memory's starting to fade, Jackie, as you get older. I'm
Mm-hmm.
63, but I got to keep that memory. And I love this going back. And when I went back, I realized how important this young man, this gentleman was to me. He was a teacher, he was a coach, he was a mentor. And so I have a great story. So what he did was he was one of my football coaches. He inspired me to go out for a sport that I didn't really care for and I didn't want to do, but I did it again because he asked me. If
Mm-hmm.
someone else had asked me, I would have probably said no, no. But it made me better all around. It was like, and then he did some things that are above and beyond the call of duty. Again, he asked my parents if he could help take me to campuses, college campuses to visit, and help me with that criteria, because neither one of my parents had graduated from a 4-year university.
Yeah.
He had a master's degree, and just a great guy. And he just recently passed. But here's a story. I'll throw this in because this is the get a good one at the end. My son got to meet him, which was like one of, I have some bucket moments. That was one of those, that my son got to meet a guy who inspired and kind of helped to make me who I am.
Yeah.
And we took a picture together. I need to find that picture because it wasn't a Zoom camera deal, but it was all of us together. And he was a big man, bigger than I was. He was supposed to go to the NFL.
Wow.
Tell another story, but he wanted to teach. And so instead of going to play for the Dallas Cowboys, he decided he decided teaching was his career path. Wow. And it was.
That's awesome.
He eventually became a college professor when he left the field of education, K-12, left as a principal, went into higher ed, got his doctorate, and so in a roundabout, one funny kind of way, it's kind of like I'm following his career path. Now, I wouldn't put myself at his level, but there's some things that I'll need to do in my life to inspire because of what he inspired in me.
That's awesome. And then to have that moment with your son to say, like, this is the person that made me the man I am today. Really cool. I love those moments. I often talk about the ripple effect, and that's my theme for this season. And so this story you just shared is definitely like the ripple effect, right? Like how one thing leads to the next thing. You have lots of background in education. So I don't know if there's something you want to share about being a principal or being a professor or anything that comes to mind that's like a really good experience. I think often too, it's nice to get when I have different educators on, like the different roles or hats they wore and sharing experiences from that too.
Well, I'll share maybe a couple, maybe one from K-12 and the other one from maybe higher ed. So in the K-12 piece, I was an assistant principal, and I realized, and probably was from earlier people, like I said, who had inspired me, but I realized how important it was to get to know names and to have a deeper relationship with your students, even as an assistant principal, because you're not in the classrooms, right? So you don't have that one-on-one or 1 to 30 or whatever kind of connection. I had a 1 to 600 connection. This was a little middle school that I say middle school, it was a 6th grade center. So they only 6th grade. Perfect. So you got all just 6th graders. They're all at one level. They're in this safe space trying to get ready to go to middle school. And that year I realized as an assistant principal, I needed to know names. Now it's easy to know names from the really bad kids, because they kind of pop up for some reason everywhere. And then of course the top kids in the ladder, the ones that everybody is talking about and are getting all the awards, they're at that level. But most of your kids are in this middle group. It's an unknown kind of a hidden group. Some of them want to stay hidden for whatever reasons, right? But my deal was, because the two extremes were easy, I was not going to not forget those names. That you'll get a discipline report and somebody's in your room every week. But the kids that were kind of the unknown quantities, I made it, and this is important. Intentionally, I went about learning names. I had taken a course about memorization and how you do these memory links, how you name like a kid could be the name of my sister, right? So I'm not going to forget Janet, because Janet's my sister's name.
Make an association.
Yes, a named association, word association name. And I still use this today when I go in and talk. And when I'm in a restaurant, I try to remember that person's name, because people relate to you a lot stronger when you call them by name. In fact, my critical thing was in the classroom. When I was in classroom, you have to get the names as fast as you can. The sooner you can get the names, the sooner you get the responses that you really need to get them to learn to do things that you want them to do, right? Because you just can't say you, he, who. And
Right,
even
right.
those of us who don't remember well, you can do their tricks and their ways
Hmm.
to cheat. Like the kids have the cheat code. So I got
Hmm.
my list and I'm cheating because I got them in a seat and I got a seat
Right, right.
assignment, but I got the name right. So learn those names, however you need to learn them. Well, that was one. And then when let me go to higher ed real quick. So higher ed, um, adult learners
Hmm.
in a lot of cases, I had some time with the undergrads, but most of my time in higher ed was spent at graduate level. So I
Okay.
was working with adults. And I can remember a story about a guy who asked me, he had come out of corporate America and he wanted to be a teacher. He had dropped a six-figure salary because he
Wow.
knew in his head that there was something more to life. That's pretty
Hmm.
amazing there. So he asked me a question one time in the class, and I don't think he was trying to trap me, but he asked a good question, and I had to think, but didn't have to think very long. He asked me, "Are leaders born or made? Are
Mm.
leaders born or are they made?" And I took about 10 seconds because I didn't want to give him just something off the cuff, but I wanted to give him some clarity, and I didn't want to just kind of give him a PC answer. And what I said was, you know what? I think it's a little bit of both.
Hmm.
I've seen people who I thought I have a story about a classmate from high school who I thought was 14 going on 44. And then and he was a leader.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, what I thought was a natural lead. Then I've seen other people who I did not ever think they would lead or be able to lead capably, me. And uh, over time, with a lot of support, with a lot of help, I think they became leaders and
Mm.
successful leaders. And so I think it's a little bit of both, common both. I could name people and they would pop out of Mahatma Gandhi,
Hmm.
Martin Luther King. The list goes on, and you can name them, and you feel like, well, they were natural leaders, right? But if somebody who grew up with them might say something
Mm.
different, you
True.
never know.
You don't
You
know.
never know. Yeah, we assume a lot of things about, well, that person was just born for that time. They really were. But sometimes it was that they were modeled and crafted, and over
Mm.
time they became that perfect leader for the period that they were living in.
Yeah, and I think like that's a great response to that student because it is a little bit of both. But I also what came to mind when you're speaking is that the whole if you don't use it, you lose it. So
Yeah,
even if you have that natural instinct
right,
to want to lead, if you don't take opportunities to lead or you don't have people in your circle that are supporting you and
right.
backing you, then that is a talent or gift that can be lost.
Could
And
be lost. Yeah.
you can have an internal gift and talent, maybe that is dormant, like when you're
Right.
younger. Like I was very introverted when I was younger. But
Mm-hmm.
then if I think back to like my earliest years as like a little kid, I was actually
Uh-huh.
very much a leader in like my neighborhood. Like I always wanted to like gather kids and like make these like fun adventures and plans. Like so in a way I was like gathering and
Yes.
leading.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I got really introverted and quiet
Right.
through I went through a really awkward stage. Like
Uh,
a
uh,
lot of people go through awkward stages in puberty. Mine was like triple awkward. It was just like, what's going on here? I don't know who I am. I'm looking all funky. It was
right.
not fun. So
Right.
it took a while for me. That was dormant then. It took a while for me to come back around to like,
Right.
oh, I do have some leadership skills,
Right.
obviously as a
Right.
teacher, but in other ways. So it has to be fostered.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And I guess great leaders, great teachers, great educators, they do an awesome job of pulling it out of you. They see things in you that you don't see. A mentor who's a real good mentor is a great listener. They observe, they are a great observer. They watch, they listen, and then they kind of just say some things to just try to help you. They don't push you, but they help you on the right track. And so, yeah, yeah, it is. And when you said that, the travesty would be that someone has a leadership. When you said leadership like that and pulling it out of you, I think about you don't lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. I think about if you have a musical skill or gift or you've been given
Yeah.
that and you don't use that talent, you really can lose that. And that went right straight to me because I had started playing piano and my mom wanted me to continue to play, and then I stopped.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I can still read the music, the notes. I know a treble clef from a bass, but it's like, yeah, I've lost that gift if I had the gift because I didn't use the gift. And
Mm.
you want to continue to use it because you can lose it.
Yeah, it's like the muscle memory.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another great piece of what you're sharing is these two stories of individuals that, well, one leaving something like corporate world making a ton of money.
Mm-hmm,
One
mm-hmm,
potentially could be an NFL football player making a
mm-hmm.
ton of money, right?
Ton of
And being
money.
at that
Right.
level.
Right.
And they
Right.
chose education. I think that's
Right.
so inspirational because of right
Right.
now, these kind of stories are important to share because we're seeing so many teachers leaving the profession
Right. Right.
and many reasons why that are very
Yes.
just and valid. But there are people who do enter education when they have other grand
Other.
opportunities
Yes.
and they
The
want to
other.
give back to community. I still think it is a profession where people feel a calling to it.
Yes. Yeah.
And we do need to take care of teachers better because it is a genuine calling to something to
Mm-hmm,
give
mm-hmm,
and be something greater. And just because you're a giver, right? You're in
mm-hmm,
like this natural
mm-hmm,
caregiver, doesn't
mm-hmm.
mean you just crap on those people. So it's like
That's
you got
right.
to take
Right.
care of the people who are taking care of our
Of
kids,
your people.
like
Right.
that,
Your
of your
your most
people.
valuable possessions are
Exactly.
your children. So you got to take care of those folks. Right. You
Yeah,
have
it's a
to.
special thing for people to say, I want to do this, I want to give back. And so that should be like, you put those people up here and you take
Yeah.
care of
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
because they're doing so much good in the world. I
Well,
love that.
and you when you say that, I think there was a time probably in this country where we did put teachers and educators on a pedestal per
Yeah,
se. We put them up there, and we really had them up there. They were like, they were esteemed in communities because
yeah,
they did the work that they do, and we've come a long way from that. And
we did.
if we can get back to doing some of that,
Yeah,
I think it would be much more healthy for us that when students come in, they are probably going to be a lot more respectful. Parents
yeah,
will be a lot more respectful.
yeah.
Administrators who are leaders, will be a lot more respectful because those folks are doing such great work.
Yeah, it's just a mind
Important.
shift. And that's
Yes.
like big part of why I wanted to start this and share these stories is that to add some transparency because
Yeah.
often sometimes judgment or assumptions from society or from people just comes from lack of knowledge or lack of like
Yes.
what does
Yeah.
teacher training look like, what does their day look like, what's their inspiration and heart and soul why they're in it, because I think there's also sometimes this stigma of I hate this stigma too, but
Uh-huh.
that teachers are just in it because they didn't get to do
Couldn't
what they really wanted to do.
couldn't make it in
Right.
another
They couldn't
field,
make it in
right? In
something
another
else. So
area.
they're
Yeah.
just stuck in
Yeah.
this thing. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not true. Maybe for
No.
like a small amount of people and they don't stay in it long. But it's generally these people like yourself, these conversations I've been having that really are inspired and felt, this is something I'm called to do. And kind of leading into like this time now that we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
with how things have changed and how we view teachers. Do you think the pandemic, like I often use this as, and I don't know exactly where you were in your career or what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
now during the pandemic, so you could talk a little bit about that. But
I can.
do you think this time is a shift in this, way of maybe we will view education and teachers and open up to like a new mindset?
I'll tell you this, and I think, Jackie, this is why you've been so amazing to me, and why I think I gravitated towards you because I was really loving what you were sharing with people, and I think we have to be careful not to lose this time period because out of the COVID era and out of the Zoom virtual world that we've kind of had to grasp a little bit of, uh, it's a great time for a resetting,
Mm,
a refocusing of education, because there was, I guess it was 2020 for sure. It was a year that could have knocked a lot of people out of education for whatever reason, for several reasons. And I think it probably did. There were people who
mhm.
retired early. There were people who just couldn't get with. There are going to be some changes that are coming because we can't do education the way we have normally done it. But it also, when you have something like that happen, it is a prime opportunity for
Mm-hmm.
change. And I think we're still in part of that window, and we need to be careful that we don't lose the window to try to go back to where things were before, because before there were some issues, and I could draw attention to some of them that weren't quite right for multiple reasons, for different populations of the that weren't being successful, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, this gives us, or has given us, an opportunity to look at education from a different standpoint, to look at the people who are providing education services for our kids from a different standpoint, and to kind of repurpose or reevaluate or reset to make things better. Because
Yeah.
we always try to improve, right? I was thinking of something somebody said the other day somewhere, and they said, I should always be about improving, whether it's reading, whether it's taking a course, whether it's doing whatever to improve myself until my last days. And I
Mm-hmm.
like that philosophy because I think it keeps you sharp. It keeps you purposeful. I think we all need a purpose in life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that teachers do is to help you connect with your purpose. What is it that you're gifted for? What is it that you really do well?
Mm.
It may be teaching, it may not be, but whatever it is, I'm going to help you set that course if I'm a really good educator. And then, it's a small token of gratitude when you see that that person has latched a hold of that. But I mean, that's really what
Mm-hmm.
what having the calling is about. It's like getting people to their sweet spot, getting them there, and then looking for the next one. Who's up next? It's like being at bat. Who's up
Yeah.
next? So and then you continue to go on from, it's all like, almost like from glory to glory. You go on from the next one to the next one, and it just kind of keeps you motivated, keeps you excited. When you see an educator who's like been in the field for 60 years, 40 years, but they're still excited about the next school year or the next school day, that's what's motivating them to get to the next thing, because
Mm-hmm.
they've inspired or encouraged a lot of folks, and they're not done yet, and neither are we.
Yeah, I really agree. Like, I don't want to lose this window either.
Yeah,
Like, everyone's like,
yeah.
pandemic's over, COVID's over, let's just get back to normal, or get back to like
Uh-huh.
what we were doing in 2019. And I'm like, it sounded like good at the
It
time where things
sounded
were
good.
really
Yeah,
bad. You're just like,
yeah.
make it stop. Like, year 3, make it stop kind of thing. But if we don't use this window, this
Yes.
opportunity of
Yeah.
evaluating, reevaluating all of our systems,
Right.
right?
Right. All of our
And
systems.
doing it in a way with real purpose, and like being really conscious about it,
Mm-hmm.
not just like putting band-aids on
Yes.
things. We don't
Right.
want it.
Right.
That's all we've been doing, is putting band-aids on things
Right.
in education, in our justice system, in
Right.
everything. And I was just thinking about this the other day, and it makes me think of this window of time.
Yes. It's a window.
So, and I teach social sciences, so we talk about
Mm-hmm.
eras, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we went from, there's so many eras if you go back to like, even prehistory, but you
Yeah.
have, just within the last couple of centuries, the industrial era, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have then
Mm-hmm.
like the information age, which is seeming to be like what we are coming out of now. And then you have this like pseudo hyper technology age, right? Of like the
Mm-hmm.
2010s on. I
Mm-hmm.
think the pandemic is not just like more technology, just more scientific thought. I really see it as an awakening. Like, it's almost
Uh-huh.
like a renaissance, like a
Right.
different, like a neo-renaissance age. And I might have
Mm-hmm.
read this somewhere too, so I'm not like coining this. Um, and if I were to call it something, it's like the consciousness age.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to keep moving higher and higher, right? Because
Right. Right.
we are growing from this time. But our school system is still in the industrial age, but the
Right.
band-aids are information technology.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep
Mm-hmm.
like adding
Just
stuff,
keep adding them on, just
but the
stacking
whole,
those. Right.
yeah, the whole system is still like kind of factory style, like
Yeah.
classes, classes,
Yeah.
classes,
Right. Right.
do this, worker bee, you're going to go into this profession, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're
Right.
like robots kind of. So
Right.
if we're moving into, we have this window of opportunity and we're moving into this new age of kind of like questioning, like purpose. What am I here
Mhm,
for? What do I
mhm,
enjoy? What do I value?
mhm.
Then education has to be there. Like we
It's
have
got
to
to
have
be there.
a system where we're
It really,
inspiring kids.
it really needs to be at the forefront, if you want to
Yes.
be frank about it, to inspire all these other things that are happening around us. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like kind of my last part I was getting into is like, is there, and you've been in the administrator level, so I'm sure
Hmm.
you have things that you have seen that definitely need to be changed. Like, what are some of those
Hmm.
key areas in education that you think are like, this needs to be changed, or this needs to be improved, or we need to do this differently, or like ideas for that kind of reform in education?
Well, I could pull out some things specifically, and I know people don't like testing, and I know there's a benefit to testing, but it's like if it's the you use the analogy or example of band-aids on top of band-aids, really. And if we continue to do what we're doing, I'm already seeing results of that, and we can
Mhm.
see results of things. So you have the test, but then you also have some flexibility. I'll tell you what happened probably in 2020, and I was not there because I was somewhat out of the school systems by that time. But I'm almost certain what I saw from the outside was that now people had to go back and wing some things that they didn't really know if they could do or not. And some of it was technological, but a lot of
Mhm.
it was some other things that we've forgotten, in terms of maybe relationships, in terms of just
Mhm.
picking up a phone or going somewhere to be with someone because you knew that they weren't going to get it any other way, unless they had a one-on-one. And so it's like now, if we're going to change this way the system works, we have to look at all the avenues. I think you said something about, you could talk about, and I know from an administrative standpoint, we was talking about it was the from high school to college route, right? But again, we talk about there are kids who are not college ready or college bound, or this is
Right.
not their career path, the best path for them to go. And so, what's the success route for them? And then to be able to share that and not have some kind of condemnation that you're going and you get you're almost scattergun. If I won't hate use a gun analogy, but
Right.
you're almost scatter shooting to where you have this range of things that they can do as opposed to
Mhm.
just one shot, one stop.
Right. Right.
Which if you look at time and education in any aspect of it, a one stop, one shot kind of a deal is never going to
Mhm.
work for all of the mass population. Some kids are going to get it, but then there's going to be a huge number of folks who are not going to be able to meet those
Yeah.
qualifications or meet that criteria. And then what happens to them? So
Mhm.
you have to be a little bit more open. I'll throw this one at you, and it's a specific one. I'd love to see where counselors can go back to counseling
Mm.
and really counsel. And then you have somebody else who's doing the testing and the other pieces
Yes.
that are important. But counselors have to counsel, right?
Yeah.
Because uh, there are homes where parents and other generations have no idea what it's going to take to get to this next piece. But if you don't have the counselors that are really connected and have the time to spend time with students, then what happens? Then they try to figure it out. And a lot of times, from what I'm seeing, from what the research is saying, from what even the universities are saying, because they're at front end, that first freshman deal, even with all the things they have to try to help freshmen acclimate,
Mhm.
is not successful if you're losing 20, 30, 40% of your coming in population. That's, to me, that's not
Mm.
successful.
No.
Successful to me
Yeah.
is 90 and above, or 95 and above, or really maybe you should say 99.9
Right.
and above. And so, yeah, we're not being successful, but those are a couple of things I can think of right off the top of my head with regards
Yeah.
to.
And this is such a need in schools. Like I talk about this often that we just don't have enough counselors in schools. Like when I went to a really big high school, and I don't know how many I think there were like 3 or 4 counselors, but my graduating
Hmm.
class was like 900. So I'm like, you're at
Yeah.
least gonna have a couple
So
hundred
how
students.
so what kind of
How are you gonna do
dialogue
that?
you're gonna have with
Yeah.
900
Yeah.
out of 3 is what,
Yeah. 300.
300 kids,
That's a
right?
lot.
How, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's too many.
And it was mostly for college, or like
Yes.
mostly the
Right.
classes you were doing. It was mostly more like an
Right.
advisor role where
Right.
you need truly mental health workers in schools. Just like we could talk about like the, policing and justice system, you need mental health care workers
Correct.
working with
Correct.
police officers and everything. Like you need those people in all of these areas of society because people need support and they need it, and it
Right.
can't fall on all of the teacher's plate or an advisor role plate. That has to be like, if a student looks like they're not doing well, they need to have that time with that
Mhm.
counselor. And if the counselor is busy or there's not enough, like that's how students fall through the cracks.
Let me
And
let me throw this
yeah,
in real quick while I'm thinking about it. So what you said, and I know we're talking about something that will take resources and some other things to make it happen. But I just recently worked with a juvenile facility,
mm-hmm,
correctional facility for juveniles up to 17, and they had, and here was the disparity, but it was like, this is what we need to have at the schools, and not when they fall through the cracks
yeah,
and they're already in this downward spiral. They had, for our numbers were about 114 students, but we probably had about 300 or so professionals who came to that building
mm-hmm,
on a weekly basis. Now look at that, almost
mm,
3 to 1.
wow,
And it was because of the critical needs that those students had, right?
mm-hmm,
But aren't they as, they're at least as critical when they're in the regular school systems.
yeah,
So you don't have the people, but look at what happens when you don't have the people. And then if you don't do even a good
mm-hmm,
job in that situation, then the next spiral is an incarcerated lifestyle, systematic kind of a deal, which is not
mm-hmm,
preferable. So it's like you have to do it before we get to that point, because if you don't do it before you get to that point, that's where you're going to be, where those kids are going to be, because they
yeah,
weren't. And there were kids who were amazing kids, but you just had to plug them in. Somebody missed the boat. Somebody lost the. Oh, I'll go back to that gentleman that I talked about, who I kind of role model myself after. And one of his big deals was prison ministry.
mm-hmm,
He was in the prisons, and one of the things that he would say, and I have an article up here because I can look at him every day, and he's praying through the bars with a gentleman, but he's
mm,
also going in there and he's talking life stuff to them. And he one of his statements was, there are a lot of boys in jail because they didn't have
yeah,
a dad, or they didn't have a role model, they didn't have a figure to follow. And he lifetime doing that along with his regular role of an administrator,
wow.
teacher, professor. So I mean, it's that kind of a
Mm.
that you get when you have someone who's committed to making a difference for people, I guess.
Yeah, and we have the whole you hear it, the school to prison pipeline in our country. And it's because and I'm not saying we're the only country, but there are a
Yeah,
lot of other
yeah,
countries, like
yeah.
I could think of like Scandinavian countries in Europe that do a much better job at investing in education, and just other places where college is free and like schools like have resources. Like there's definitely places that are supposedly on our, level of country status and economy that do it
Mm-hmm.
way better than we do it. And we have a culture of reaction in this country. We invest in reaction. We don't invest in prevention. Like
Right.
that's our healthcare system, right? That's education. We
Mm-hmm.
have probably more money that goes into the prison system than in schools.
We do, we
We
do.
do. I mean, it's
I think
awful.
someone's one doc is very documented that we do. We spend more dollars per person
Yeah.
on people who have been incarcerated, and we're talking about juvenile and the adult folks, than anything that happens at our other levels. So
Yeah.
it's amazing that we would do that. But you're right. But look at that. That feeds into being reactive as opposed to being proactive.
Right. And so you have to put the money into the foundational programs like healthcare and schools and the justice system and whatnot to make it work for people, to then prevent people from being in those really dire situations. And juveniles that end up in those places, you know, maybe some really are just like, I don't know, bad seeds, right? Bad kids, but many of them, it's because they don't have support. They don't have a support system.
Right. Because
And
they don't have
are, their brains are still developing like rapidly in their teenage years. They don't have the way to reason like you do as an adult. Like you just don't. Like it's biology. Like they need to have support, and we should be investing in having more of those support systems in schools. And now look, that's great they have it in the juvenile center, but they should be in schools as well, because they've fallen through the cracks.
They have. And this is something to throw in with what I've said and what we both are saying. At the front end, the foundational end, which is like kindergarten and the early elementary levels, and all the things you need to do there. I know we've thrown some money at that. I know there's Head Start programs and programs like that. But I also know that the elementary schools, and I don't know if I can say this if I don't have all the data, but I know from past times, I know that those were the poor, most lowest paid positions. At the upper levels, there are higher paid positions. And we've already talked about how difficult it is to be an elementary teacher, right? And I haven't even started about, because I didn't do preschool and I did not do pre-K. I started from K-12 up because I started out as a physical education teacher. So I saw all the levels.
You saw all of them, yeah.
And I saw all of them. And I know how hard it was for me to keep my kindergartners on task. It was a joy. It was a joy when they did, but it was tough. I knew that was not my sweet spot. But hey, so I only bring that up because I feel like if you want great people at those levels to do the foundational stuff and to have it, you're going to have to be able to resource them and pay them the adequate wages that they need. And maybe even, and this is being blunt about it, but maybe even more so than at the back end, which is where I think the salaries are the most. I know I was a principal, so I know what the salaries were at the top end at the high school levels, and that's great. But I also know that at that bottom end, where the critical pieces are already happening and where things are happening that they're going to set their own course for life. They've done the data. If we don't do it down there, sometimes by the time we're at middle school or for sure high school, it's almost too late.
I know.
And I would love to see a little bit more of that type of thing. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll give you, for instance, because you asked me about administration. And I remember how one district, I won't expose that district, but how they did. And I think I'm using this example because I think it's happened in a lot of places where the best principals, the best leaders, and leaders are important. This is a real good, important part of this. Where if they started out at elementary, where they put them, they would move them up to high school for several reasons. Again, the pay is better there. The opportunities to go into central administration where the pay is maybe even better. But maybe there's a reverse thinking, and we're in that reset where if foundationally I need to have my best people at that level, and they really, really are good, because let me just share this. I'll beat this one into the ground because I talk about leadership in my motivational stuff, and I taught leadership at the higher ed levels. Leadership is so important, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a whatever. If your leader is bad, man, everything else can go to pot. If you've got a great leader and you have a tough school system or tough urban school or whatever, wherever the school is, and you've got a great leader, you got a chance. You got a really good chance of having a great school. I don't care what else is happening. So maybe I should be beating this drum, and that is to have those great leaders down at those lower levels and really pumping those schools up and getting there, taking care of great educators like you and doing the things that they need to do to promote great education. And there are a plethora of things that could go with that. But
everything starts at the foundation, and
everything starts at the foundational level. I know I got a great foundation from my mom and dad, and then from those early teachers. If I don't have that, I don't know where I'm going to be where I would
Mm-hmm.
be today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So put the money in the support system, particularly in elementary schools,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
those kids have everything they need to feel supported, and then they can fully develop as
And
they
then they
go
can fully
through.
develop
Yeah,
as they
I
develop.
definitely, but well, salaries across the board need to be up. I know there's
Yes. Yeah.
something that was just proposed by a congresswoman recently of minimum wage would be $60,000 for teachers like
Mm-hmm.
across the country.
Mm-hmm.
That also looks different in each state. Like
It looks different in each
one
state depending
state,
on the
yeah,
economy,
one state that
right?
could be great.
Depending
Another
on
state
the
could be like,
working.
well, we don't
Yeah.
want to have
Another
that.
state, it
Yeah.
might not be correct.
So I think it needs to be tiered depending
Right.
on where that
Right.
status is in each.
Right.
But I definitely think there needs to be like a huge bump increase with the minimum in each state across the
Right.
board. And I think they need to put that money more into those elementary schools and
Oh,
there's
yes.
teacher
Yeah.
salaries. Because I'm in a private school, so it's a little different. Like we have a
Uh-huh.
salary schedule, so it is transparent, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing has to do with, and it's a 3 division school, nothing
Right.
has to do with like elementary, middle, or upper school. It's based just on like your years of teaching and your degrees. So that's
Mm-hmm.
good. It's not like different across the board with the
Right.
division. So, and we can see that, but I know in public school, in the school districts,
Right.
it's very much tiered. So
It's
like, yeah,
very much tiered.
elementary is lower pay, high
Yeah.
school's higher
And
pay.
then up and
I'm
then up.
telling you,
Right.
like my job's hard. I see what they do. I have friends who are elementary school teachers. I'm like, I could not do your job. Like I would come home and just go right to bed. Like I don't think I could even like talk to my husband. I'd be like, I
Uh-huh.
don't know. I don't know what to do anymore. Like,
But you know your calling, and
yeah,
I think that's a really important part of it as you process. So I'll go back to the higher ed thing because as we're processing teachers and trying to get teachers ready for going into the schools and then deciding the pathway and whatnot to do a better job even at that, because the higher ed people
yeah,
can say, hey, you know what, and especially with mentors and teachers, professors that go a little bit above and beyond. I'm saying above and beyond, but really this is where it needs to be at the grassroots level,
yeah,
that they need to be able to help guide people to their calling. And I thought about this. So at both of my first 2 schools that I attended, especially with James Madison was my undergrad school, I thought they had a really, really good teacher uh, teacher development program. Uh, I know there were probably some issues, but I thought they did a good job of preparing me. They prepped me because they not only did the teacher student teacher deal, but they had a pre deal before that. So
mm-hmm.
that if you got to that point and you felt like, hey,
Yep,
this is not for me, then I can retract myself or do something else. But I think there's some things that need to be done there in terms of
yeah,
teacher preparation and bringing folks in, whether it's through the regular course or whether it's through a later prep deal where you have someone who's like that gentleman that came in from corporate America.
mm-hmm.
You bring that person in and you just help them decide, where am I best? Let me get a chance. Let me get a shot at being able to work with
Yeah,
that group.
yeah,
Is that the group that I'm set
right,
in
right.
course for? Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah,
I
you need
that
to
I
be in the
fit the best with.
classroom a lot earlier. Like my
Yeah, yeah.
university did something similar. I went to Westchester University in Pennsylvania, and my junior year, I think, by junior year, I was in the classroom
Correct.
observing, meeting
Right.
with teachers,
Right.
getting a feel. And I think I had to go to various levels. So my certification was 7 through 12. So I had to do middle and high school. And then when I student taught, they
Yes.
placed me, which I think there should be choice, but they placed me in middle school, which is fine because I
Uh-huh.
ended up teaching
Uh-huh.
middle school then
Uh-huh.
after college.
Right.
And I liked middle school too as well. I don't know if I could do it now, but I'm glad I had the opportunity to do both middle and upper school.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, so I think you need, going back to also the universities and the teacher preparation programs, they really need to be like in the classroom early on and
They
like
need to be
seeing it.
in there. They need to be there
Yeah.
very early, as
And
early
talking
as
with
we can put
teachers.
them in there.
Yeah.
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 You mentioned at least by the junior year,
Yeah.
but I would even
Oh
go as
yeah. No.
far to say to a little bit earlier than that. Maybe not as a
Yes.
freshman, but maybe by the
Sophomore year.
sophomore year,
Yeah.
they're in and they're doing some things and they're connecting with teachers and they're getting a chance to
Yeah.
talk and have real conversations, and then also witnessing, oh, I know I would be great at the. Oh no, I don't. This is not my
Yeah.
age group. I cannot
Yeah.
do. Like we just said about
Right.
kindergarten. So yes, Yeah.
Right. What are the various roles that you could
Yeah.
feel out what is like the right fit for you?
There
Because
are
most
there are
people say, I
ways.
didn't know what to do until I actually got in the classroom. So give
I
them more
believe
time in
that.
the
I believe
classroom.
that. You
Yeah.
know, who was it? Somebody said, even McDonald's,
Hmm.
McDonald's, they will not throw you into a situation when you first start there. You have to shadow people and you have to do all this
Mm,
other stuff. And you think about what happens sometimes when some teacher prep, and then even once that you gain your degree and you're applying for a job and you're thrown in, and
yeah.
sometimes I hate to say this, Jackie, but sometimes you're thrown into the toughest situation
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everyone who's really good has had their choice. So they've moved up, they've
Right.
got great classes, they've got this, but
Right.
then you bring in someone who is green or brand new,
Yeah.
and they're in a classroom with some kids that maybe some other folks in that building did not desire. They have that
Right.
class. Now they've got to make things happen. And they've also, oh yeah, oh by the way, we have a standardized test that you have to meet these criteria. And if
Yeah.
you don't, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah. The
So
pressure. It's
yes,
crazy.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so you do all of that and then you bring these people in. There's a way to do it.
Hmm.
It's going to take more time. It's going to take that big word intentionality, that
Hmm.
we do things and we do it with a purpose, and we protect our people, because they're the companies that are Fortune 500 and above. They their criteria that they do, that they share with people, is not just making a bunch of money,
Right.
although they're going to make a bunch of money if they do the right things. And
Yeah.
then they get into this criteria about why are they so good? Well, they do this and this for their people, right?
Hmm.
Same thing for education. We have to do a better job. And here's our reset. We can do a better job. And
Retention too. It helps to
yes, and
retain.
retention's huge.
Right.
Retention
So
is
if you
huge.
give, like, I could see if there was a place where a new teacher can have maybe one like difficult,
Yes.
subject or class
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
mentor by their side
With
to
a
help them with
mentor,
that.
with
So they're
someone who's
getting that
helped the guy. Yes.
experience.
Right.
But
Right.
then it's like, what is something you really want a teacher do? And you give them
Right.
that as well. So
Right.
it's a little bit of both. And I think then you could help a teacher really grow. And then I think also teachers need to, once it's like even by year 2 or so forth, start giving them opportunities for leadership, start giving them opportunities to initiate a program in a school, make
Mm-hmm.
them feel like they're part of that community and they're not just being like, this is what you teach, this is what you do, these are the tests that
Right.
you have to give.
Yes, sir.
And that's
Jackie,
it.
you just hit on something. I have to share this. So one of the things that kept me in that first 5 year window is kind of like college
Mm,
has the first 2 year window, and then people are stopping out and dropping out. Well, in
right.
teaching, this been well documented. First 5 years, if they don't make it through that first five,
Yeah.
they don't make it through. They don't make it. And to have something good along with something tough, or someone to
Hmm.
guide them, I had it, and I got it in a funny roundabout way. So there was always something that I could look forward to in my first
Hmm.
5 years. So it was tough the first 5 years, and I didn't always have great leaders. Not gonna call them under the rug, but I didn't always have great. And so, I can remember one year I had 14 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 14 by the time I walked to get my food, 15 minutes for lunch. And I made it work. Now I don't know
Yeah.
how I did. I looking back, I was 23. I guess I was just eager, something,
Right.
but
Right.
I made it work.
Now we
But
would be taking the Tums afterwards because we'd
now
have
you would be
indigestion.
doing, yeah, we'd be doing something. But having something to look forward to
Yeah.
within that school day that kept me motivated in the 5. And then after the 5 years, that's when I decided I need to do more. And I have this quick story. I thought I was going to go into law enforcement because I thought, I don't know that this is really where I'm supposed to be. The guy said to me, he said real quick, and this is on the third interview because there are 4 step levels to getting in, and I
Mm-hmm.
was almost there, right? But he said, everybody can't do what you do. And it was my epiphany.
Mm.
And I walked back out of there and I never came back. I had a 4th
Wow.
interview set up, didn't do it. And I decided the next step for me was getting my master's degree because I needed to know more about what I did,
Right.
which
Right.
was the best thing that ever happened to me. That caused me to go
Mm.
to Texas and
Mm.
a lot of other things. So, yeah,
Hmm.
uh, yeah,
Yeah, just opportunities, so
yes,
that you feel inspired to stay in it and grow. Like,
yes,
I think there could
yes,
be lifer teachers, like I'm on my 17th year in the classroom, but I've also moved around and I've been in
correct,
public charter private schools in many different states.
yes,
So I've explored a lot of different options. I've taught every grade from 7th to 12th in so many different subjects, from Hawaiian history to now AP
Right.
psychology. So like I
You
keep it
had
fresh. Yeah.
you have a great background. Same thing. I've done public,
Yep.
private. I had 2 years with a private school. I had a charter school that I was the principal at. And then I had in this last little bit had the juvenile correction center
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it helps in college, undergrad, graduate, and even doctoral people. So it's given me an idea of what needs to happen, where the pieces don't connect because they don't sometimes, and where they should connect. It really just
Yeah.
helps me to have a better overall vision of what education is all about.
Well, I love what you're doing, Calvin. I love being connected with you. This has been so great to have you on the Teacher Story. You are such a motivator. And I love hearing about the speeches that you give at various like universities and organizations, and can't wait to see more in 2023, the work that you're doing. So
Well,
thank you so much for being on the show. And
thank
if
you,
you want to let
Jackie.
our listeners know, and I'll put this information in my show
Okay,
notes, like where they could find you or connect with you
right.
or learn more about you.
Well, easy. My website is calvinlawrencespeaks.net. But I'm more excited about collaborating with you. I'm looking forward to doing things in 2023. I
Yes.
feel like this is the year you're going to really take off. Although you've already taken off, you're even going to inspire to higher and greater heights. So I'm looking forward to supporting you however I can.
Thank you so much. And we will definitely be collaborating more in 2023. So thank you again and have a great day. Happy holidays.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.